Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk about a feeling that quietly shapes our lives. The feeling of being lost. Not lost in the sense of missing directions on a map, but lost in a far deeper way. As a species, we have conquered mountains, split atoms, mapped the human genome, and connected the world through invisible networks of information. Yet, despite all this progress, many of us wake up with a silent question echoing in our minds: where are we going? For thousands of years, humans navigated life using stories. Stories about gods, nations, identities, and destinies. But in the modern age, many of those old stories have faded, and the new ones have yet to fully take form. We stand in the middle of unprecedented freedom, unlimited choice, and infinite data, and paradoxically, this has left us more confused than ever. We scroll endlessly, chase goals that aren't ours, and mistake movement for direction. We are surrounded by noise but starving for clarity. In a world where we can access all knowledge with a single tap, we have somehow lost the map to our own lives. And yet, being lost is not a failure. It is an invitation, an opportunity to rewrite our narrative, to choose consciously rather than drift unconsciously, and to rediscover the compass that technology, society, and fear have slowly blurred. Today, I invite you to explore not just how we got lost, but how we can find ourselves again. Human beings have always imagined themselves as explorers, navigators of land, of oceans, of science, of meaning. For centuries, we believed that if we simply advanced our knowledge far enough, we would eventually arrive at a final destination, a place of certainty, clarity, and purpose. But in the 21st century, after achieving levels of progress our ancestors could not have dreamed of, we face an unexpected paradox. We have more information, but less understanding. More connection, but less community. More freedom, but less direction. In many ways, despite our accomplishments, we are lost. We are lost not because we lack tools, but because we lack a story. For thousands of years, humans lived within narratives that gave life a sense of meaning: religions, traditions, cultural frameworks. These stories were imperfect, yet they provided a compass. They told us who we were, what we should strive for, and why our struggles mattered. Today, many of those stories have fragmented. The old maps have faded. The new maps are still being drawn. And most dangerously, many of us have stopped looking for a map at all. We are lost because we scroll more than we think, react more than we reflect, and consume more than we create. We mistake constant stimulation for genuine purpose. Every day, we drown in oceans of content, opinions, arguments, predictions, and distractions. And in this sea of noise, the signal of our own voice often disappears. We live in a world where attention is the new currency, but most of us have unknowingly surrendered ours. We are lost because we are overwhelmed by choices. Freedom is a remarkable gift, but it comes at a cost: responsibility. When anything is possible, choosing one path becomes terrifying. When all doors are open, stepping through any single door feels like a trap. So we hover at the threshold of our own lives, paralyzed by possibility, afraid of regret, and uncertain of what we truly want. We are lost because we have outsourced our thinking. Algorithms now predict what we desire before we consciously realize it. They tell us which roads to drive, which songs to enjoy, which partners to date, which dreams to pursue. They offer simplicity in a world of complexity. But this convenience carries a quiet danger. When something else decides for us, the muscles of our own judgment begin to deteriorate. We are lost because we are moving faster than our minds can adapt. Human biology evolved. Over millions of years, technology evolves every 12 months. We still carry ancient emotional software: fear, desire, envy, tribalism. Yet we live inside a digital world that amplifies those instincts to extreme levels. Our internal compass, designed for survival on the savannah, is now trying to navigate a planet of skyscrapers, satellites, and simulated realities. And yet, being lost is not the end of the journey. It is the beginning. Being lost forces us to stop, to pay attention, to question the stories we inherited and the assumptions we never examined. Being lost means we are no longer blindly following old paths. It means we are ready to create new ones. The moment we admit we are lost, we reclaim the possibility of finding direction again. We are lost, but not doomed. The ability to reflect, to observe ourselves, to reinvent purpose, this is the greatest strength of our species. We are the only animals capable of asking, "What am I doing here?" And even more remarkably, we are the only ones capable of answering. The real danger is not losing our way. The real danger is pretending we know the way when we don't. The real danger is confusing movement with progress, noise with meaning, urgency with importance. The real danger is building a life around goals that were never ours in the first place. To find ourselves again, we must rebuild our internal compass, not by returning to old stories that no longer fit, and not by surrendering our agency to new technologies, but by consciously choosing what we value, by deciding what deserves our time, our attention, and our energy, by remembering that purpose is not discovered in the outside world, it is constructed within the mind. And so, as we stand in this moment of uncertainty in a world overflowing with information yet starving for wisdom, the question remains, what will we are overwhelmed with information but starving for meaning? Freedom has multiplied our choices but weakened our clarity. Technology amplifies our instincts while quietly shaping our decisions. We are overwhelmed with information but starving for meaning. This reality defines our age more than any technological invention, political system, or economic structure. Never before in human history has the average person had such immediate access to the collective knowledge, myths, facts, fantasies, mistakes, discoveries, and opinions of billions of other humans. And yet, despite this unprecedented abundance, or PE, wraps, because of it, we find ourselves unable to form coherent meaning from the chaos around us. Our minds were never designed to drink from an ocean. They evolved to sip from small streams of experience, to process the familiar rhythms of daily life, to interpret slow-changing environments. Today, we face an infinite torrent of stimuli that our cognitive mechanisms struggle to navigate. The result is not enlightenment but confusion, not wisdom but fragmentation, not clarity but exhaustion. In earlier eras, information was scarce and therefore valuable. Messages traveled slowly, and the meaning of events was shaped gradually through shared reflection. A story told in a village held significance because it was not competing with millions of other stories. People could digest events, debate interpretations, and embed lessons within cultural memory. Today, the sheer volume of information has dissolved those communal processes. We no longer absorb stories, they wash over us. We do not debate meaning, we scroll past it. We do not internalize knowledge, we skim it. The speed of information has outrun the speed of comprehension. What once required contemplation now demands instant reaction, and meaning dissipates before it can take shape. The abundance of information has also altered our relationship with truth. When every voice can broadcast a message to the world, the signal becomes indistinguishable from the noise. Instead of one clear narrative, we encounter thousands of conflict. Ancient narratives, each claiming authority. Facts have become weapons in ideological battles. Data has become a resource to manipulate rather than understand. And truth, which once served as a foundation for collective decision-making, now bends under the weight of countless interpretations. In this landscape, meaning becomes not a shared compass, but a personal construction, vulnerable to distortion, bias, and emotional influence. Information overload has another hidden consequence. It erodes our ability to focus. Meaning emerges from depth, not from breadth. It requires time, patience, and sustained attention. But our attention has become fragmented. Notifications, alerts, updates, and endless streams of content compete for our mental bandwidth. Every day we consume more information than our ancestors encountered in months. But consumption is not comprehension. Our minds become cluttered with fragments, half-remembered facts, headlines without context, opinions without foundation. These fragments accumulate like digital debris, leaving little cognitive space for deep reflection. The result is a chronic sense of internal noise that makes meaning difficult to hear. Furthermore, the architecture of our modern information systems is not designed to nourish meaning, but to capture attention. The algorithms that shape our digital experiences are built to maximize engagement, not understanding. They prioritize content that provokes emotion, rewards impulse, and confirms our existing beliefs. This creates feedback loops that narrow our perspectives rather than expand them. Instead of exploring the world, we circle within digital echo chambers that reinforce familiar patterns. This illusion of knowledge replaces the pursuit of knowledge. We feel informed, yet remain intellectually malnourished. The consequences of this environment extend far beyond personal confusion. When individuals cannot derive meaning from their experiences, society begins to fracture. Shared values weaken, collective goals dissolve, and cooperation becomes difficult. Humans require meaning not only to make sense of their lives, but to form cohesive communities. If each person constructs meaning from a different informational universe, the possibility of unity erodes. We become groups of individuals living in parallel realities, unable to agree on basic truths, unable to engage in productive dialogue, unable to solve collective problems. The crisis of meaning becomes a crisis of civilization. The search for meaning is further complicated by the rise of infinite choices. When information was limited, the pathways available to individuals were clear. People understood their roles within the community, the expectations of their culture, and the values handed down through tradition. Today, every individual is expected to create their own identity, purpose, and worldview from scratch. This freedom is empowering but also overwhelming. The absence of clear guidance leaves many drifting through life without a sense of direction. Information alone cannot fill this void. Meaning must be constructed, yet most people have never been taught how to construct it intentionally. Information abundance also affects our emotional landscapes. Stories once guided our moral instincts, shaped our myths, and offered wisdom about human nature. Today, emotionally charged content floods our minds at a speed that outpaces emotional processing. Tragedies, conflicts, scandals, and global crises appear on our screens daily. The human nervous system cannot sustain empathy for the entire planet simultaneously. Compassion becomes diluted. Suffering becomes normalized. Our emotional responses oscillate between numbness and overwhelm. Meaning, which relies on emotional coherence, dissolves in the turbulence. Another factor contributing to our starvation for meaning is the illusion of understanding created by easy access to information. When knowledge is instantly available, we confuse availability with mastery. Reading about a subject gives the impression of expertise, even when the understanding remains shallow. But meaning requires depth, not speed. It requires grappling with complexities, contradictions, and contexts. It requires developing wisdom, not merely gathering data. The belief that we already understand discourages the pursuit of true understanding. This illusion leaves us intellectually complacent and spiritually unsatisfied. Moreover, the modern world often prioritizes productivity over reflection. We are trained to optimize, to hustle, to perform, to produce measurable outcomes. But meaning does not emerge from constant activity. It arises in the quiet spaces, in moments of introspection, in conversations that unfold slowly, in experiences that cannot be measured or monetized. When our schedules become saturated with tasks, commitments, and digital interactions, the inner space required for meaning-making disappears. We become efficient but empty, successful but directionless, connected but alone. The pursuit of meaning is also hindered by the commodification of identity. In a world driven by branding, social media performance, and curated personas, our sense of self becomes entangled with external validation. We shape our identities according to what garners attention rather than what resonates with our inner truth. Meaning becomes a performance, not an exploration. The more we chase approval, the further we drift from authenticity. This disconnection from ourselves makes it impossible to construct meaningful narratives about our lives. The complexity of the world adds another layer to the crisis. Global systems, economic, technological, ecological, have become so intricate that even experts struggle to fully understand them. Ordinary individuals, confronted with these vast systems, often feel powerless or ignorant. When the world feels incomprehensible, meaning becomes elusive. People retreat into simple stories, conspiracy theories, and ideological BBLs because they offer the illusion of understanding. But meaning built on illusion is fragile, and it collapses in the face of reality. The hunger for meaning is evident in the rise of self-help movements, mindfulness practices, and identity-based communities. These are attempts to reclaim a sense of direction in a world that feels chaotic. However, many of these attempts provide temporary relief rather than lasting transformation. They address symptoms rather than causes. They offer frameworks but not foundations. The quest for meaning requires more than motivational slogans or spiritual shortcuts. It requires a deliberate reconstruction of our relationship with information, attention, and identity. To begin rebuilding meaning, we must first acknowledge the limitations of our minds. We must recognize that we cannot consume infinite information without consequence. We must create boundaries that protect our attention from fragmentation. We must develop habits of deep engagement, practices that foster reflection, and environments that support contemplation. Meaning grows in the soil of focused awareness, and we must cultivate that soil deliberately. We must also redefine our relationship with truth. Rather than treating facts as tools for winning arguments, we must approach them as pathways to understanding. We must resist the temptation to seek comfortable narratives and instead embrace complexity. Meaning emerges from confronting reality, not escaping it. This requires intellectual humility, the recognition that our perspectives are incomplete and our beliefs provisional. It requires curiosity, the willingness to explore unfamiliar ideas. It requires courage, the strength to revise our worldview when necessary. Rebuilding meaning also requires reclaiming our emotional lives. We must learn to process the constant. Freedom has multiplied our choices, but weakened our clarity. At first, this seems paradoxical. For generations, humans dreamed of the kind of freedom we experience today. The freedom to choose our careers, our lifestyles, our beliefs, our relationships, our identities, our ambitions, even our realities. We have more autonomy than any previous era. The boundaries that once constrained our ancestors, economic limits, social roles, traditions, geography, have loosened or disappeared entirely. The modern world has unlocked possibilities that would have appeared miraculous just a century ago. Yet beneath this vast expansion of freedom lies a subtle burden that few anticipated, the burden of navigating endless paths without the guiding narratives that once provided direction. In earlier ages, people did not have endless choices. But they had clarity. Their lives were framed by stable stories, one's role in society, one's duties, one's purpose, one's identity were largely predefined. These frameworks were often restrictive and unjust, yet they provided psychological certainty. A farmer knew he would continue the work of his father. A child born into a particular class knew the boundaries of aspiration. A community shared rituals that shaped the rhythm of life. People found meaning because they did not have to invent it. It was already waiting for them. Freedom was limited, but clarity was abundant. Today, the situation has reversed. The old stories have unraveled. The boundaries between social roles have become porous. The concept of a normal life has dissolved. Individuals must negotiate the complexities of identity, morality, opportunity, and self-realization without traditional anchors. The result is a new kind of uncertainty. We are no longer guided by inherited narratives. Instead, we are expected to create our own. And this expectation, far from being liberating, often becomes oppressive. For when every choice is possible, the responsibility to choose becomes overwhelming. Choice overload affects every aspect of modern existence. Consider something as simple as selecting a career. Not long ago, career paths were limited by geography, education, and family background. Today, a young person can choose to become a scientist, a filmmaker, a programmer, a musician, an influencer, a designer, a trader, an entrepreneur, or 100 other things. Each path carries its own subpaths, specializations, digital variations, and global possibilities. The abundance of options does not simplify life, it complicates it. Every path chosen means countless paths abandoned, and the awareness of these abandoned possibilities creates a persistent sense of uncertainty. Did I choose the right path? Should I have pursued something else? Am I living my potential or wasting it? This phenomenon echoes across relationships as well. With technology, geography no longer limits human connection. Dating platforms provide access to thousands of potential partners, each with unique backgrounds, desires, and lifestyles. In theory, this should increase the likelihood of finding a compatible partner. In practice, it often creates emotional paralysis. When confronted with endless options, commitment becomes difficult. The sense of possibility becomes a source of anxiety rather than hope. People worry that choosing one person means missing out on countless others. Ironically, the greater the freedom, the more fragile the commitment. Many relationships fail not because of incompatibility, but because of the overwhelming abundance of alternatives. Even in the realm of personal identity, the multiplication of choices introduces confusion. Individuals today can choose their values, beliefs, affiliations, and philosophies from a global palette. The freedom to construct identity is remarkable, yet it requires a level of self-understanding that few have been taught to cultivate. Without guidance, people drift between ideological trends, lifestyle aesthetics, and cultural expressions, adopting fragments of meaning without integrating them into coherent identities. The result is internal fragmentation. We are free to be anything, but unsure of what we should be. The modern world also presents a conflict between external expectations and internal desires. Freedom does not eliminate expectations, it multiplies them. We are expected to be ambitious but balanced, authentic but adaptable, confident but humble, independent but connected. We must pursue success while nurturing well-being, cultivate relationships while maintaining autonomy, and build careers while seeking passion. These expectations do not arise from one community or tradition. They come from the countless voices of society, amplified by media, culture, and digital platforms. The more choices we have, the more pressure we feel to choose wisely. and the more likely we are to feel inadequate. The constant presence of comparison adds another layer of difficulty. Social media exposes us to the curated successes of millions. We see people achieving extraordinary feats, traveling to exotic places, building perfect relationships, launching businesses, mastering hobbies, transforming their bodies, and living lifestyles that appear effortlessly joyful. Confronted with this ocean of possibilities, individuals feel compelled to evaluate their choices constantly. Comparison becomes habitual, and clarity becomes elusive. It is difficult to choose one path wholeheartedly when thousands of seemingly better paths flash before our eyes every day. Moreover, freedom has extended beyond practical choices into existential ones. People now must choose their philosophies of life. Should one pursue happiness, success, service, self-expression, adventure, spirituality, productivity, or balance? Should life be about achieving goals, savoring experiences, cultivating relationships, or contributing to society? These questions were once answered by tradition, religion, or community. Today, individuals face them alone. Without a shared map, each person must draw their own. But few know how to draw maps. As a result, many drift from one philosophy to another, driven by trends rather than introspection. The absence of a stable philosophical foundation contributes to a sense of inner disorientation. Choice without guidance can become a burden rather than a gift. This is evident in the growing prevalence of anxiety, indecision, and existential confusion. People struggle to commit to careers, relationships, lifestyles, or identities, not because they lack ability, but because they fear making the wrong choice. They delay decisions, hoping for clarity that never arrives,